Internal documents obtained by NTD suggest the Chinese regime knew about the outbreak long before they made the information public. Chinese authorities lifted the lockdown on Wuhan today, but experts and locals worry that many cases are asymptomatic and not reported, which could trigger another outbreak. The Chinese Communist Party first accused the U.S., then Italy, for the origin of the CCP virus.
近来，美国一些政客把新冠病毒同中国相联系，这是对中国搞污名化。
So who is to blame? Patient zero in 19 countries reveals. At a press briefing on Monday, President Trump questioned a reporter if she works for China. What's this media's link to Beijing? Ireland joins a list of European countries to receive faulty medical gear from China, saying 20% was unusable, costing the country millions. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Documents from a Wuhan CDC obtained by NTD appear to show the regime was worried about fever patients at least 8 days before human-to-human transmission was made public. Checking for fever is the most common way to quickly screen patients for CCP virus. The January 12th report shows the CDC asking all hospitals and medical centers in the district to record how many fever patients visited them. A former Chinese doctor tells us this is an unusual request and only happens when there is suspicion of a contagious disease in the area. The first column is a list of hospitals and medical centers. The second column is the total number of patients seen that day. The third column shows how many patients had a fever. In 5 health centers, all patients had a fever. In one hospital, almost half of the patients had a fever. Chinese authorities announced human-to-human transmission on January 20th. That's 8 days after the date on the internal report. A February 8th document from the same district appears to show that not all CCP virus deaths were counted in official figures. The document lists all designated CCP virus patient hospitals in Wuhan. But the list only includes 2 of the 22 medical centers listed in the previous report. But the medical centers that were not included had CCP virus deaths. A third document shows there were at least 8 deaths. These 8 deaths were not counted in the official figure since they were not from designated medical centers. This is just a snippet of information because we don't have all the internal papers. Wuhan is set to lift its lockdown on April 8th, but experts estimate that area currently has at least 10 to 20,000 asymptomatic people. The Chinese regime does not count asymptomatic patients, those who are infected but show no symptoms, as confirmed cases. The chief expert at Wuhan University's Department of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine says asymptomatic patients are 0.15% to 0.3% of Wuhan's total population. That would mean around 10 to 20,000 people. The number of asymptomatic patients in other countries look to be much higher, leading many to question if Chinese authorities again are covering up the real figure. In Italy, 60 people went to donate blood in a small town in northern Italy. Out of these 60, 40 tested positive for the virus. None of these people had symptoms and all thought they were fine and had been going about their lives as normal before then. They are all now in self-isolation. We previously reported that a lawyer in China has been exposed to a disciplinary punishment by a society of lawyers because she posted an article on Weixin about the long waiting lines at a funeral house in Wuhan. She wrote in the article, "I hope that all people who committed malpractices in this epidemic will be brought to justice as soon as possible and get the punishment they deserve." Now we have the decision of the Lawyer Society from April 3rd. The wording is very similar to the warning to Dr. Li Wenliang, whistleblower of the epidemic, who was silenced by Chinese authorities and later died from the virus. Dr. Li was accused of spreading untrue information and disturbing the order of society severely. This lawyer was accused of making known of unproven phenomena, publishing inappropriate speech, and spreading and provoking dissatisfaction with the government. A netizen wrote, "Under the reign of terror, everyone loses freedom of speech." In Latin America, Brazil is the country hardest hit by the virus, with over 12,000 infections and over 500 dead. A Brazilian minister wrote on Twitter on Saturday, the new virus might help China dominate the world. He wrote, from a geopolitical perspective, who will become stronger from the global crisis? Adding China is the source of the virus outbreak. The tweet has since been deleted. China's ambassador to Brazil responded on Monday, demanding an apology. And in southern China, residents fearing for their lives, and some areas on lockdown again. NTD Xu Rong has more.
A video has been circulating online showing what appears to be a village in southern China, with its shops and schools closed due to an outbreak. On April 4th, the Chinese regime's National Health Commission claimed that Guangdong province confirmed new cases, but said the virus was imported from elsewhere. A netizen commented, it said the outbreak is more serious than Wuhan, adding, but the authorities are ready to put the blame to the Africans who've just arrived in Guangzhou. A local business owner told us that since April 4th, they've started to close down some areas in Guangzhou City again because of an outbreak. The interviewee's voice has been distorted to protect his identity.
I've been closed for 2 months. Now I'm finally open again, and this happened. The roads aren't open, and the roadside snack bars aren't allowed to open.
Mr. Zhou said a couple who own a restaurant were diagnosed with the CCP virus after they showed symptoms.
Temperature checking at all entrances is very strict. Going out, we wear a high protection N95 mask.
The closures have caused fear among the residents.
Now that the epidemic has reached our area, who isn't afraid? Basically, nobody comes out now. Those who come out to do business are risking their lives in order to earn some money.
Mr. Zhou said even though businesses were forced to close for 2 months, owners still need to pay rent. It's a major loss, but the government won't give any subsidies.
I'm selling vegetables. My business isn't going well. Now many people don't dare to go out and buy food. When they do come out, they buy food for a week. Could you say the situation isn't serious?
Reporting by Xu Wenrong, NTD News.
After 76 days of isolation, Wuhan has lifted its lockdown. But experts and locals worry it could lead to a second wave of virus outbreaks.
For 11 weeks, millions of people were trapped in Wuhan, China due to the outbreak. Today, they are allowed to leave. The lockdown was lifted midnight Wednesday. Local officials have been reporting minimal new cases for weeks and 0 deaths on Monday. But a video posted to social media on Monday shows people with full protective gear carrying a body bag in the night. The netizen who posted the video wrote, in order to complete their task to have 0 infections, the neighborhood covered it up and did not report the death. They dealt with the body at midnight because they do not want to create panic during the day. Politics is above human lives. In a WeChat voice message posted online, a person said in Wuhan dialect that her friend works as a volunteer for a medical team supporting Wuhan. She warned people to be careful because the true situation is not as officials claim.
然后外面的那个无症状感染者也多，然后确诊的人也多，然后因为现在就是因为你去做任何检查，然后你隔离，然后你治疗全部都是自费啊，就不像原来最开始最简单的时候是国家付钱，现在全部都是自费，所以慢慢都有的人就是家庭经济条件慢慢差的，没得钱的人就不愿意去，然后就在外面瞎搞，所以还是形势蛮严峻。然后正是因为不报，所以蛮多人就是这种警惕性就少了。
In an interview on Monday with state media, a Wuhan doctor warned there could be 10 to 20,000 infected people in Wuhan who are not showing symptoms, and these people can transmit the virus to others. He said people should still be cautious and avoid going out unless necessary. The interview has since been removed. A video on social media shows a famous tourist site in southern China packed with people, some without masks. Local authorities opened the site free of charge on Saturday, saying they want to revive tourism. The authorities later said on Sunday that the site reached its capacity, 20,000, and would not admit any more people. Despite concerns of asymptomatic cases, Chinese media Beijing Daily News said today Wuhan's lockdown is lifted. 276 trains will depart to other cities in China. Ticket pre-sales show 55,000 passengers plan to leave Wuhan on Wednesday. In addition, the local aviation administration said over 200 planes will take off on Wednesday, carrying 10,000 people from Wuhan to other parts of China. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
The Chinese regime has been accusing first the U.S., then Italy of the origin of the CCP virus. But patient zero in multiple countries, all found to have close ties with Wuhan. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
The Chinese regime has been busy pushing a disinformation campaign. Its goal? To shift blame from the origin of the virus away from China.
Recently, some U.S. politicians have linked the novel coronavirus to China. This is smearing China. We are very angry and strongly opposed to it.
The regime denies responsibility for the CCP virus, but records show that in at least 19 countries, the first people infected were from Wuhan, had been to Wuhan, or were in contact with others from Wuhan. Italy's virus death toll has now risen to over 17,000. It's the highest number outside China. The first two patients that tested positive in the country are a couple from Wuhan, China's virus epicenter. They left for Italy before Wuhan was put under lockdown. Meanwhile, the first patient in the U.S. was a man who traveled to Wuhan to visit relatives. He tested positive on January 20th. The U.S. now has the third highest death toll outside China, with over 12,000 reported deaths. The same day, South Korea reported its first case of the virus, a woman from Wuhan. The first 3 confirmed cases in France had all visited Wuhan before arriving in France. Germany's patient zero came in contact with an asymptomatic Chinese co-worker who had recently interacted with her parents from Wuhan. And on January 25th, Canada discovered its first virus patient, a man who traveled to Toronto from Wuhan. Likewise, Australian authorities also confirmed the country's first case on January 25th. The patient, a man that had been to Wuhan before arriving in Melbourne. Juliet Song, NTD News.
At a press briefing on Monday, President Trump questioned a reporter about her media's background. The reporter denied working for China, but the outlet actually has close links to Beijing. NTD's Catherine Wen has the story.
On Monday, President Trump questioned the reporter's background at a White House CCP virus or coronavirus press briefing.
Who are you working for, China? You work for China or are you with a newspaper? Who are you with?
Hong Kong Phoenix TV.
Who owns that, China? Is it owned by China?
Hong Kong.
No, is it owned by the state?
No, it's not. It's a private-owned company.
Okay.
The president's question was prompted by the reporter repeatedly asking him about working with China to fight the virus. The reporter replied that she works for Hong Kong Phoenix TV. She called it a privately owned company, but the outlet is known to have close ties with Beijing.
Phoenix TV is an overseas media controlled by the Chinese Communist Party.
During a 2017 congressional testimony, China expert Sarah Cook called the station an example of a Chinese propaganda outlet not directly owned by Beijing. At that time, the Chinese state-run media, CCTV, had a 10% stake in Phoenix TV. The station's founder and CEO, Liu Changla, was a former Chinese military propaganda officer. He later worked for the Communist Party's official radio station. From time to time, the outlet reports on topics taboo in mainland China, like food safety scandals. It does this to present itself as an independent voice, but on sensitive issues, they stick to official narratives.
If Beijing is not happy with some of its content, the Foreign Propaganda Department or the Foreign Ministry will take it to the higher-ups in the company. Then the piece of news will need to be taken down. I personally ran into situations like this.
The station's narrative also remains the same when reporting on the pandemic, keeping in line with the Chinese state-run media's criticism of the U.S. response. Last week, Phoenix TV wrote on Twitter that, in response to U.S. officials accusing China of concealing information, Chinese Foreign Affairs spokesperson Hua Chunying criticized some U.S. officials, saying they seemed anxious to deflect blame. She also called their actions shameless and immoral. Access to White House press briefings is controlled by an independent journalist group. On Tuesday, many questioned the group about granting access to a media with close link to Beijing. The organization hasn't publicly responded. Catherine Wen, NTD News.
And Ireland received a shipment of medical equipment from China, of which a lot of it were not usable. They are certainly not the first European country that wasn't happy with the shipments they received from China.
Last weekend, Ireland received a consignment of personal protective equipment. 20% of the items were unusable in treating the CCP virus because they didn't meet Irish Health Service requirements. Another 15% were deemed acceptable for use, but only if a preferred product is not available. This category alone is worth over $4 million. The health service said they don't want any further deliveries of this kit as part of their ongoing order. The UK revealed on Monday it had received 17.5 million test kits from China that were unreliable when used for patients who aren't severely ill. Professor John Bell, coordinator of coronavirus testing for Public Health England, said they see lots of false negatives and false positives when screening patients with the Chinese test kits. Before this, the Czech Republic had said up to 80% of the 150,000 virus test kits they had bought from China were faulty.
The Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security in the fight against the CCP virus, officials and various agencies across the U.S. working to bring things under control. The most recent effort, a new deal with mask maker 3M.
President Trump on Monday announced the White House has reached an agreement with manufacturing giant 3M
for the delivery of an additional 55.5 million high-quality face masks each month.
The deal comes after President Trump invoked the Defense Production Act. Not happy with the amount of N95 masks the company was delivering from the American factory stationed in China, posting in a tweet, "We hit 3M hard today," after seeing what they were doing with their masks, referring to reports that they were exporting many of their masks to other countries. In addition to the deal with 3M, FEMA has committed to spend nearly $4.1 billion on its virus response, the Federal Emergency Management Agency flying in medical supplies from across the world. Last week alone, millions of gloves, masks, and gowns were brought into the U.S. Over 10 flights and 23 more are scheduled through April 18th. Hospitals, healthcare facilities, and nursing homes have first priority. And last week, FEMA sent ventilators from the national stockpile to the hardest-hit states needing it: Michigan, New Jersey, Illinois, Connecticut, and Louisiana, while Customs and Border Protection works to keep critical trade going. Since the end of January, U.S. has brought home over 43,000 American citizens. For those at sea, the U.S. Coast Guard has brought in 1,200 passengers from cruise ships.
Beware of false claims from businesses that might be trying to profit off the pandemic. That's the message from LA officials who say one China-based company posed a continuing threat to members of the public with their home test kits. That company agreed to settle outside court with the city on Friday.
Officials in Los Angeles say the city is settling a lawsuit against a Chinese company that sold fake home test kits to screen for the new virus. Yacon Genomics advertised its one-step kit for $39, saying it would take just 15 minutes to use, even claiming it was FDA approved. LA City Attorney Mike Fewer, however, says the FDA has not approved any home test kits for the virus. The Chinese-based company agreed to a settlement on Friday. It has to stop advertising and selling test kits and refund anyone who's already bought them. Fewer says several companies have been trying to profit off the new virus. One company selling vitamins online, saying they can prevent people from getting the virus. Or Norwegian Cruise Lines, whose employees told customers that traveling to warmer climates was a safer way to travel and might not endanger them.
President Trump asking Congress today to authorize an extra $250 billion in relief funds for small businesses struggling amid the outbreak. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell hopes to approve the funding in the Senate on Thursday.
The president asking Congress on Tuesday to provide an additional $250 billion in relief funds to small businesses hit hard by the pandemic. The funds would add to the $349 billion in forgivable loans to small businesses as part of the historic $2.3 trillion stimulus package. President Trump saying the increase is necessary to make sure the funds don't run out.
And by the way, we're going to be going for, it looks like, a very substantial increase in the number because we'll be running out of money pretty quickly, which is a good thing in this case, not a bad thing.
Small businesses, independent contractors, people who are self-employed, and charities are all eligible if they meet the program's requirements. Over half of the U.S. workforce is employed by small businesses.
My administration will continue to take the boldest action in history to bring immediate relief to the small businesses. So when we open up in a hopefully very short period of time, we're back into business.
On March 27th, the president signed the CARES Act, which includes the Paycheck Protection Program, primarily designed to keep employees on the payroll throughout the crisis. The U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, will forgive the loans if employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks. The money can also be used for costs like rent and utilities.
As of today, SBA has processed over $70 billion in guaranteed loans, which is far greater than we would have ever thought at this time, I think, Steve. I don't think we ever had any number like that in mind.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying he will work with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer in hopes of approving the funding in the Senate on Thursday.
And an update on the hardest hit state in the U.S. New York saw its biggest jump in virus death, but signs of a plateau has the state thinking about how to restart the economy. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more.
Optimism in New York on Tuesday with virus hospitalization rates going down. The governor said he sees signs of a plateau.
This is the 3-day hospitalization rate. We tend not to look at any one day. Day to day, it's up somewhat, but if you look at the 3-day average, it's moving down.
ICU and daily intubations were also way down, but on a sour note, New York also had its biggest death toll over the past day, 731. And as of Tuesday, nearly 5,500 people have died from the disease caused by the CCP virus. Mayor Bill de Blasio said they're eyeing Hard Island in the Bronx for temporary burials in case they need it, but preferred not to speak about it too much.
We're going to do everything we can to handle each case one by one, respectfully. And we will be able to deal with whatever's thrown at us. But right now, I just want to leave it at that.
To ensure enough beds are available for future patients, President Trump has allowed those who have tested positive to be treated on the USNS Comfort.
The president, to his credit, moved expeditiously, called me back yesterday afternoon, said they would make the Comfort non-COVID.
Cuomo said the state is now thinking of how to restart the economy. It's also looking to get antibody testing approved by the FDA to find out who has and hasn't had the virus. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
The State Department is telling overseas Americans to find a way home sooner rather than later, or else they face getting stuck abroad. There are fewer commercial flights, and chartered flights won't always be possible.
The State Department is telling all Americans living abroad to find a way home as soon as possible. That's if they don't want to get stuck overseas during the pandemic.
Get off the fence. It's very simple. Get off the fence. These are individual decisions. People need to decide, am I going to remain where I am for an indefinite period of time, or do I want to go back to the United States?
46,000 Americans have already been repatriated from over 70 countries, but service won't be available forever.
If someone decides to wait it out for a week or two before deciding, they might find that decision has been made.
But the department isn't just helping Americans. It's also committing $225 million to bolster foreign health systems and support laboratories.
That's on top of the roughly $274 million in funding we've already deployed to 64 countries across the globe. No country can match this level of generosity.
Among a range of global initiatives, public service announcements about fighting the virus have also been translated and distributed in 50 languages.
We're always looking for opportunities to partner with the private sector, one of the most powerful force multipliers of our nation.
One example is a partnership in Nigeria to reach more than 1 million citizens per day with messages on how to stay safe during the pandemic.
Some auto insurance companies are giving money back to their customers because people are driving less during the pandemic. Allstate says it will refund about 15% of premiums paid by customers in April and May for a total of $600 million. American Family Insurance says it's giving back about $50 per car for a total of $200 million. Both insurance companies say they are expanding coverage for customers who use their own vehicles to deliver food and medicine during the virus outbreak. It's unclear if other insurers will follow suit, but Progressive says it is exploring options. The pandemic is taking a physical and emotional toll on New York City's paramedics and first responders. Juan says he has never seen anything like this during his 17 years of service.
China reported 0 deaths yesterday. It's the first time it's done so since the beginning of the outbreak, a magnificent milestone if true. But U.S. intelligence officials recently called suspect to China's reported virus figures. Just a few days ago in China, an entire city was put under lockdown to stop the spread of the virus. Officials have not yet released details on how many there are infected. Wuhan residents, where the virus first began, are still not allowed to travel to Beijing. In fact, many neighboring provinces also won't accept them because they don't believe the outbreak is under control there. Even state media and Chinese netizens aren't making much noise about 0 deaths. It's not even a trending topic on social media. The ruling Chinese Communist Party wants people to go back to work to support the economy. It plans to lift the lockdown in the epicenter, Wuhan, on Wednesday.
Little Caesars is donating 1 million pizzas to first responders in the next few weeks as the virus pandemic continues. The pizza chain says pies will be donated to hospitals, police departments, and fire departments. The Give Back kicks off Tuesday at the Detroit Medical Center in the company's hometown. Little Caesars says these donations could serve up to 4 million meals. And starting next Monday, customers can also get in on the action. When they use the Little Caesars app or order online, they have the option to pay it forward and donate a pizza to a nearby hospital or first responders. Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.